She never wanted to marry a Korean billionaire, but to save her father's job, she was forced into a loveless union. What she didn't know was that behind the mansion's walls, secrets, betrayal, and a shocking twist were waiting for her. Sit down, relax, and let's enjoy this beautiful story like no other. Maya stood at the airport window, watching planes take off into the cloudy sky. Her heart felt heavy. Behind her, her father, Mr. Johnson, was smiling as if this was the best day of his life. He had just been promoted by the wealthy Han family, and the new job meant relocating from America to South Korea. Maya, her father said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder, this is our new beginning. You'll see, Korea will feel like home. Maya forced a smile. She loved her father too much to break his excitement, but deep inside she wasn't happy. Leaving her friends, her world, everything she knew, just because of his job, felt unfair. Still, she stayed silent. When they arrived at Seoul, a black limousine was already waiting. The driver bowed deeply. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. The city lights sparkled outside the car window, but Maya barely noticed. Instead, she watched her father's proud face. For him, this job wasn't just work. It was his whole life. She whispered to herself, if this makes him happy, then I'll endure it. The days turned into weeks, and life in Korea felt almost like a dream. The city was alive with colors, bright neon lights, busy streets, and endless opportunities. For her father, it was everything he ever wanted. Every morning, he left for work with a smile, finally proud of the new position that had brought them all the way from America. For her, things were different. At first, she felt like a stranger in a new land. But slowly, Korea started to feel like home. She joined a small acting workshop in Seoul, where she practiced lines and expressions in front of mirrors. The more she acted, the more she realized her heart belonged to the stage. At night, she would sit by the window of their new apartment, watching the glow of the city. She whispered to herself, one day they'll know my name. For the first time since leaving America, she allowed herself to dream again. Life in Korea continued to shine for Maya's family. Her father often spoke with excitement about his work at the big company. It was clear he loved his job more than anything. It gave him purpose and pride. One evening, the boss, Chairman Kong, invited Maya's family to his grand mansion. The house was breathtaking. Wide marble steps, tall chandeliers, and paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum. Maya's eyes lit up. She had never seen such luxury. Chairman Kong greeted them warmly. He was tall, sharp-eyed, and carried himself with the power of someone used to being obeyed. He laughed easily with her father and asked kindly about Maya's life in Korea. Maya, who was still excited about chasing her dream of becoming an actress, answered politely but with bright enthusiasm. To her, this was just a normal dinner. She didn't notice how carefully Chairman Kong watched her, or the way he seemed more interested in her than in the meal. The next morning, in the boardroom, Maya's father stood nervously by the door, clutching his cap in his hands, while Chairman Kong sat behind a sleek black desk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Johnson, Chairman Kong began, his voice calm but commanding. I will get straight to the point. Your daughter, Maya. I want her to marry my son. Maya's father blinked in shock. His throat tightened. Sir? My daughter? She is still young. She just started dreaming of becoming an actress. Chairman Kong raised a hand, cutting him off. My son Minho is dying. The doctors give him little time. He refuses everything I offer him. Marriage, treatment, responsibility. But I cannot let my family legacy end with him. I need someone strong beside him. Your daughter is the one. The words struck like thunder. Maya's father's knees felt weak. He had served this company for years, poured his sweat into it. This job was his family's survival. Chairman Kang's voice dropped lower, sharper. If she agrees, your job and your family's security will be guaranteed. If she refuses, his eyes narrowed, his silence said the rest. Maya's father stood frozen, his heart breaking. between his loyalty to his daughter's happiness and the fear of losing everything. He realized this was no request at all. It was an order. That evening, the house felt heavier than usual. Maya was sitting on the couch, flipping through her script notes when her father walked in. His shoulders were slumped, and his eyes carried a sadness she had never seen before. "Maya," he said softly, his voice breaking. She looked up, sensing something was terribly wrong. He sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "The chairman, he wants you to marry his son. He says it's the only way to protect my job." His words trembled in the air, like a confession he wished he never had to make. Maya's heart froze. "What? Dad, this doesn't make sense." She pulled her hand away, her voice rising. "You want me to marry a stranger, a dying man, just to keep her job?" Her father's eyes filled with tears. "I know, Maya. I would never ask this of you if I had a choice. But everything we've built here, everything we have, it depends on this. Please try to understand." Maya stood up, pacing the room, torn between anger and heartbreak. "I came here to chase my dream, not to be sold into someone else's story." Her voice cracked, but deep down, she could see her father's desperation. He loved his job, and more than that, he loved her. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya realized her life was about to change forever. "No, Dad, I can't do this. You can't trade my life for your job," she shouted, her voice breaking. Her father didn't argue. He only lowered his head, too tired to explain, too broken to fight back. That silence hurt Maya more than his words. For days, she ignored the request. She stayed in her room, pretending to focus on her scripts, but the image of her father sitting alone at the dinner table haunted her. He no longer smiled, no longer laughed. His eyes were swollen from crying, and every night she heard him whispering prayers. One evening, she came into the living room and found him staring at his work ID card, tears running down his face. Maya froze at the door. For the first time, she saw how much his job meant to him, and how much he had sacrificed for her. Her chest tightened. Slowly, she walked to him, knelt by his side, and held his trembling hand. "Dad, I'll do it," she whispered. "I'll marry him." Her father's eyes filled with more tears, but this time they were tears of relief. He pulled her into a tight embrace, whispering, "Thank you, Maya. You've saved me." Maya closed her eyes, her heart heavy. She had chosen love for her father over her dreams. The hospital room was quiet. The only sounds were the steady beep, beep of the heart monitor and the slow drip of the 4. Maya stepped inside with her father, her chest tight, her palms damp with sweat. There on the bed lay Minho. His skin was pale, his body thin, and tubes ran from his arms to the machines, keeping him alive. His eyes were closed, lost in a deep coma, yet his presence filled the room. Chairman Kong stood by the bedside, his hand resting firmly on his son's. He turned to Maya and her father, his face heavy with emotion. "This is my son," he said slowly. "Minho may not have long, but I want him to know the warmth of a wife by his side before it's too late. And I will want the wedding as soon as possible." Maya's throat tightened as she stared at the young man who would become her husband. She had imagined someone sickly but awake, maybe even bitter, not this. Not a man asleep, trapped between life and death. Her father's eyes glistened as he whispered, "Maya, please for me." Maya's heart ached. She had agreed out of duty, but standing there, looking at Minho's fragile body, she realized her life was about to change forever. The wedding hall was filled with whispers. White flowers lined the aisle and golden lights shimmered above, but Maya's heart felt empty. This was not the wedding she had dreamed of as a little girl. This was a contract, a sacrifice. Her father stood at the side, unable to look her in the eye, guilt written across his face. Chairman Kong, however, sat tall in the front row, his lips curled into a satisfied smile. Everything was going according to his plan. Then came the sound that silenced the room, the squeak of wheels. Maya turned and saw Minho being pushed in. He was in a sleek wheelchair, his body weak, his head resting against the side. Tubes and drips hung from his arm, his face pale, like porcelain. His eyes were closed. He did not see her. He did not hear the vows. He did not know he was getting married. Maya's hands trembled as the priest began the ceremony. Her voice cracked as she repeated the vows, glancing at the man who could not answer back. The ring slipped onto his finger, cold and lifeless. The guests clapped awkwardly, some hiding their shock behind polite smiles. Chairman Kong clapped, louder than everyone, proud that his dying son now had a wife. As Maya stood there beside Minho's motionless body, she felt a shiver run down her spine. This was no ordinary marriage. It was the beginning of something darker than she could ever imagine. After the wedding, Maya moved into the Grand Kong mansion. At first, she thought she would at least be treated with kindness since her husband was lying helpless in the hospital bed. But she quickly learned that Madame Kong, Minho's mother, saw her as nothing more than a burden. Every day, Madame Kong found ways to humiliate her. She would hand her trays of food and order, "Serve the guests properly, don't embarrass this family." Other times, she would make her polish the silverware or arrange flowers, jobs the servants were already paid to do. Whenever Maya made a mistake, no matter how small, Madame Kang's sharp voice echoed through the mansion. "You are not fit to be in this house. Don't think being Minho's wife makes you important." Maya swallowed her tears and kept quiet, but at night she curled up in a lonely bed and whispered, "Why did I agree to this? Why am I here?" Her heart longed for freedom, but her father's face, the man who depended so much on this marriage, kept her from running away. Late at night, when the mansion was finally quiet, Maya sneaked out to the hospital. The sterile room was dim, with only the soft beeping of the machines filling the air. She walked slowly toward Minho's bed. His face looked so calm, almost peaceful, but the tubes and drips attached to his body made her heart ache. She sat on the chair beside him and reached for his hand. "Minho!" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know if you can hear me, but please wake up. I don't want to be alone in this house anymore." Her eyes filled with tears as she lowered her head. For the first time, she prayed, not for herself, but for him. "God, give him another chance. Please don't take him away." For a moment, she thought she saw his fingers twitch, but when she looked up, his body was still. She sighed deeply, rested her head by his bedside, and closed her eyes. Maya had prayed until her eyes grew heavy. She rested her head on Minho's bed, still holding his hand as if her touch could wake him. The soft beeping of the monitor was the only sound in the room. But suddenly the door opened. It was Madame Kong. Her sharp eyes fell on Maya, sleeping by her son's side. Anger burned in her chest. "What are you doing here?" she shouted, her voice echoing in the hospital room. Maya jumped up in shock. Tears were still fresh on her face, but Madame Kong didn't care. "You are not his wife. You are a burden," she snapped. "Don't think your pity will wake him." Maya tried to explain, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to pray for him." But Madame Kong pointed at the door with cold eyes. "Leave." Maya's heart broke as she looked back at Minho's still face. She whispered softly, "Please wake up," before walking away in silence. Maya went to her father's house late that night, her face pale and eyes swollen from crying. She quietly dropped her bag on the floor, but her father was waiting in the living room. He looked at her with concern. "Maya, what happened?" he asked softly. Maya tried to hold back her tears, but her voice cracked. "His mother hates me, Dad. She doesn't want me near Minho. She said I don't belong." Her father's hands trembled. He stood up slowly, his heart torn. "I'm sorry, Maya. I brought you into this mess. But I can't fight Chairman Kong. If I lose this job, we lose everything." Maya stared at him, searching for comfort, but all she found was helplessness in his eyes. For the first time, She realized she had no one but herself. She nodded silently, wiped her tears, and whispered, "It's okay, Dad. I'll endure it." But deep inside, her heart was breaking. The next day, Maya went to the hospital again. She sat quietly by Minho's bedside, her hands wrapped around his. The steady rhythm of the monitors filled the room, a constant reminder that life was still in him. With her eyes closed, she whispered another prayer, her voice soft but full of faith. "Minho, if you can hear me, please give me a sign. Please let me know you're fighting." A tear rolled down her cheek and dropped onto the back of his hand. Suddenly, she felt a faint movement. His fingers twitched beneath hers. Her eyes flew open. "Minho!" she gasped, staring at his still body. She waited, hardly breathing, and then his hand moved again, just slightly, but enough for her to know it was real. Maya's heart raced. "You heard me. I know you did," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy and fear. She pressed his hand to her cheek. "Don't give up. I'll be here until you wake up." But as quickly as it happened, the room fell silent again, leaving her unsure if it was real or just her imagination. Still, hope had been born in her heart. Days passed, and Maya kept visiting Minho every day. She talked to him about everything, the weather, her dreams, even the little things she did in the mansion. One morning, as she adjusted his blanket, she noticed his eyelids flicker. Her breath caught. "Minho!" she whispered, leaning closer. His lips trembled as if trying to form a word, but no sound came out. His fingers moved again, stronger this time. Maya quickly pressed the nurse button. Doctors rushed in, checking his pulse and machines. "This is good," one of them said. "He's responding." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She clasped his hand tightly. "You're coming back to me, Minho." "I knew you would," she said softly, though his eyes stayed closed. There was a small sign of life, a faint smile forming on his lips. And for the first time, Maya felt hope burning brighter than fear. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the steady beep of machines. Maya sat by Minho's side, holding his hand, whispering another prayer. Suddenly, his fingers tightened around hers. Her eyes widened. She leaned closer, her heart racing. Slowly, Minho's eyelids lifted. His vision was blurry, the light too bright, but he could make out a figure by his side. A soft voice broke through his confusion. "It's me, Maya. You're awake," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. His lips parted, and a weak, raspy sound escaped. Who are you?" Maya's heart ached, but she forced a smile, brushing his hair gently. "I'm your wife, the one who's been waiting for you." For the first time in months, Minho's eyes truly opened, staring into hers. And though weak, there was a spark, a sign of life, a sign of hope. Maya broke down, laying her forehead against his hand. "Thank you, God, he's back." Minho was no longer the silent man in coma. Days turned into weeks, and with Maya by his side, his strength slowly returned. At first, it was only small things, moving his hand, whispering a few words, opening his eyes longer. The doctors were surprised at his progress, calling it a miracle. But Maya knew it was the power of love and prayer. Each day, she read to him, fed him soup, and encouraged him to sit up. Sometimes he was frustrated, pushing her hand away, his pride wounded by weakness. But Maya never gave up. "Don't give up, Minho. You're stronger than this," she said softly one evening, wiping sweat from his forehead after a therapy session. For the first time, he looked at her, really looked at her. His voice was still hoarse, but he managed to say, "Why do you care so much?" Her eyes glistened. "Because you're my husband, and because no one deserves to fight alone." A silence lingered, heavy yet tender. For the first time, Minho's heart stirred with something he hadn't felt in years: warmth. Minho finally recovered and was able to leave the hospital. The first person he asked for was Maya. She had been by his side when no one believed he would wake up. At first, he was quiet, only watching her from a distance. But as days passed, he started talking to her more, asking about her dreams and what made her happy. He laughed at her little jokes, and for the first time in a long while his heart felt light. Maya, who once felt like a stranger in the mansion, now felt seen. Minho would follow her with his eyes whenever she walked into the room. He began to smile in ways no one had seen before. Slowly, he grew fond of her, and though he didn't say it out loud, everyone could see. Maya was no longer just his wife on paper. She had become the reason his world felt alive again. Life in the mansion had not changed much. Madame Kong still treated Maya like an unwanted stranger, giving her endless tasks and criticizing everything she did. One evening, during dinner, Madame Kong insulted Maya in front of the house staff, saying she was nothing but a burden and would never fit into their family. But this time, things were different. Minho, now stronger and fully awake, slammed his chopsticks down and looked his mother straight in the eyes. "Enough, mother," he said firmly, his voice echoing in the large dining hall. "Maya is my wife, and from today, anyone who disrespects her disrespects me." The whole table went silent. Madame Kong was shocked. She had never seen her son speak against her like this. Maya sat frozen, her eyes wide, heart pounding. For the first time, she felt someone truly standing up for her in this cold mansion. And in that moment, she realized Minho wasn't just defending her, he was choosing her. After that night at the dining table, everything started to change. Maya no longer felt completely alone. Minho began to notice her more. He asked about her day, and sometimes even joined her when she sat in the garden. For the first time, Maya saw his smile, and it made her heart warm. One afternoon, Minho found her sketching in a notebook. "You draw?" he asked gently. She looked up, shy, and nodded. He smiled. "Show me." That small moment broke the walls between them. Slowly, laughter replaced silence, and kindness replaced fear. Maya realized he wasn't just defending her, he was beginning to care for her. One evening, the air in the mansion turned heavy. Maya and Minho were sitting together, laughing softly after dinner, when Chairman Kong suddenly called them into his study. The old man's face was calm, but his eyes carried power. He looked at Maya, then at his son, and said in a firm voice, "Minho is healthy now. The deal is over. There is no need for this marriage anymore. You two should divorce." Maya froze. Her heart pounded as his words echoed in her ears. Divorce? After all the pain, the prayers, and the bond she had built with Minho? She glanced at Minho, hoping he would speak, but his father's voice thundered again. This marriage was only to save the family's honor. Now it must end. Maya's hands trembled. For the first time in weeks, she felt like an outsider again. The room fell silent after Chairman Kang's words. Maya's hands trembled, her heart sinking as if the floor had been pulled from beneath her. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Minho stood up sharply. "No, father!" His voice cut through the heavy air. "I will not divorce her." Chairman Kang's eyes widened and used to being challenged. "What did you say?" "I said no." Minho's voice grew firm. He walked closer to Maya and gently held her hand. "This marriage may have started as an arrangement, but somewhere along the way I found something real. I found love, and I will not give it up just to please you." Maya's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she saw Minho not as the weak man she once prayed for in the hospital, but as a strong man willing to fight for her. Chairman Kong slammed his hand on the desk, furious, but Minho stood his ground, his gaze never leaving Maya's. After Minho's bold refusal, Chairman Kong left Maya and Minho alone, but his mind was already plotting. That evening, he summoned Maya's father to his office. "You have done well keeping your daughter here," he said coldly, "but if you do not convince her to leave Minho, you will lose your position in my company. Everything you worked for will be gone." Maya's father felt his heart sink. He looked down, helpless. "Sir, I cannot force her against her will." Chairman Kang's eyes narrowed. Then you will watch everything you built crumble. This is your choice. Maya's father returned home that night with a heavy heart, guilt weighing on him. He wanted to protect his daughter, but the man who held his livelihood in his hands had left him powerless. That night, Maya sat alone in her room, the mansion quiet around her. Her father had called her about the threat from Chairman Kong, and it weighed heavily on her heart. She thought about Min-ho, who had finally recovered and was starting to care for her. She thought about the love slowly growing between them. But she also thought about her dreams, her career, her freedom, and the life she wanted to build for herself. With a deep sigh, she whispered to herself, maybe it's time, maybe I need to let him go and chase my own dreams. The next morning, she found Min-ho in the garden. Her heart ached as she approached him. Min-ho, we need to talk, she said softly, avoiding his gaze. He looked at her, sensing something was wrong. What is it? I think it's better if we separate, she said, her voice trembling. You deserve someone who can be fully here for you without fear, and I need to focus on my dreams, on becoming an actress. Min-ho's expression darkened. What are you saying? Maya, don't do this. You're not alone. I'm here. Maya shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Min-ho, but Chairman Kong, he threatened my father. He said, if I don't step away, my father could lose his job. This is the only way. I can't let my father lose his job, and I can't let you be caught in this mess because of me. For a moment, the world seemed to stop, the mansion silent except for the wind rustling the garden leaves. Min-ho's gaze softened, but his expression grew firm. He shook his head. No, I will never let you go, Maya. I don't care what threats they make. I care about you. And if this is what you want, to chase your dreams, I have an idea. Maya blinked, confused. What do you mean? We can pretend to divorce, he said, his voice calm but intense. We'll make it seem like it's over for your father's sake, for appearances, but in reality we'll see each other secretly. You'll go after your career, and I will wait for you. Maya's eyes widened. But what about your parents? What if they never agree to this? They will find out eventually. Min-ho reached out and gently tilted her chin to look at him. I will deal with them. Don't worry about my parents for now. This plan is only temporary, just long enough for you to pursue your dreams. And Maya, even if everyone else doesn't understand, I will never let you go. Not now, not ever. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stared into his eyes. Min-ho, you really mean that? He smiled faintly, but his eyes held a fiery promise. I do. I love you, Maya. And no threat, no rule, no parent, nothing will ever change that. You focus on your dream, and I will be right here, waiting. Always. Maya's heart swelled, a mixture of relief, fear, and love crashing together. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him. And looking at him, seeing the strength and devotion in his eyes, she felt the first spark of courage to face everything ahead. I trust you, she whispered, holding his hand tightly. Min-ho squeezed her hand back. Good. Then go. Shine. And come back to me. Maya arrived in Seoul, her new apartment, small but cozy. The city was alive with energy, and for the first time, she felt like she had stepped into her own world. Auditions came quickly. Each day, she rehearsed lines, perfected gestures, and built her confidence. But even in her busiest moments, Min-ho lingered in her thoughts. She remembered his promise and the way he had held her hand that morning. One evening, after a long day, Maya sat by her window, looking at the Seoul skyline. She whispered, I hope he's proud. I hope he knows I'm trying. Though miles apart, their bond remained unbroken. Each step Maya took toward her dream was a step toward the future they had secretly promised each other. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was light. Chairman Kong and Madam Kong smiled as they imagined Min-ho officially divorced from Maya. They believed their plan had worked. Maya out of the house, Minho under their control again. But Minho had returned, strong and determined. He walked into the living room, his eyes cold, his presence commanding silence. "You're happy I divorced her?" he asked, voice sharp. Both parents froze. Chairman Kong opened his mouth, but Minho cut him off. "Do you think money gives you the right to use people like objects? To manipulate their lives, their hearts, and then toss them aside when it suits you?" Madam Kong tried to speak, but Minho shook his head. "I've seen enough. I've watched how you treated her, how you tried to control my life. You're users. That's all you are. Using Maya for your convenience. Thinking you can throw her away because you have money. Well, you were wrong." His voice shook slightly, but his words were firm and full of truth. "I regret being your son. I regret being part of a family that measures people by wealth and status instead of heart. Maya has more strength, more honor, and more love in her little finger than both of you combined." Madam Kang's face paled. Chairman Kang's lips tightened. They were used to commanding obedience. But this time their son had taken the power back. Minho's chest rose and fell, his eyes blazing. "I don't need your approval, and I will never let anyone treat her the way you treated her. I choose her happiness over your greed. And if you cannot respect that, then you will have nothing from me." The room fell, completely silent. The wealthy couple realized, for the first time, that Minho was no longer a puppet. Their plans had failed, and their son had found his own strength. In Seoul, Maya's father sat quietly in his office, staring at the polished desk. Years of work for Chairman Kang's company had brought him prestige, but now it felt meaningless. The memory of his daughter being forced to marry Minho, and now being forced to divorce him, weighed heavily on his heart. He couldn't bear to face Maya, seeing the pain she endured because of his decisions and the pressures from Chairman Kong. With a heavy sigh, he began packing his personal belongings into a small box. Each item, a framed certificate, a pen, a few documents, felt like a reminder of how powerless he had been. He quietly left the office, the hallways echoing with his footsteps. At home, he sat alone in the living room of their modest apartment. He gazed at a photo of Maya, her young smile frozen in time. Tears welled in his eyes. "I've failed you, Maya," he whispered. "I should have protected you. I should have fought for you instead of bending to them." He realized he couldn't continue working under Chairman Kong. The shame and guilt were too heavy. He decided to resign from his position, leaving the company for good, hoping that he could find a way to make amends and support Maya in the future. Though the job was gone, his love for his daughter remained. Every thought, every plan was for her happiness, and he promised himself no one would ever control her life or hurt her again. Weeks passed, and Maya worked tirelessly audition after audition. One evening, she received the call she had been dreaming of. She got her first major role in a TV drama. Her heart leapt with joy, and tears rolled down her cheeks. She called her father first, wanting to share the news. "Papa, I did it. I really did it," she exclaimed, her voice shaking with excitement. Her father, though still sad about the past, smiled through his tears. "I'm so proud of you, Maya. You've worked so hard." Unknown to Maya, Minho had already heard about her success from a trusted friend in the industry. That evening, he walked through the mansion gardens alone, but with a proud smile on his face. "She's shining, just like I always knew," he whispered softly. Later that night, he sent a small congratulatory gift to Maya, a delicate necklace with a tiny star pendant, symbolizing her rising star. She opened it and felt a warmth in her heart, though she had no idea it was from him. Despite the distance and the pretense of divorce, Minho's love and care never wavered. He watched her grow from afar, protecting her quietly, celebrating her victories silently, and waiting patiently for the day when they could be together without fear or pretense. Years passed, and Maya's acting career flourished. She had landed multiple TV appearances, her confidence growing with every role. Audiences adored her charm, talent, and determination, and slowly the name Maya began to be recognized across Seoul. One evening, Chairman Kong and Madam Kong sat in their mansion living room, flipping through the TV channels. They stopped abruptly when a familiar face appeared on the screen. "There, that's her," Madam Kong whispered, pointing at Maya, who was delivering lines flawlessly in a live drama segment. "The girl we forced him to divorce, she's actually good. Very good." Chairman Kang's eyes narrowed. "I see. She's growing popular and successful. Humph, who would have thought?" Madam Kong leaned forward, her tone sharp. "Do you think we made a mistake?" Chairman Kong remained silent, a flicker of concern crossing his face. For the first time, they felt the weight of their own arrogance. Their attempts to control Minho and Maya had not only failed, but had allowed Maya to thrive despite their interference. Meanwhile, Minho stood by a window, observing the mansion from a distance. He had already anticipated this. "They'll see her now and realize what they tried to take away," he murmured, a small, satisfied smile on his lips. Maya, oblivious to their gaze, continued performing on the show, radiant and focused. She was finally free to shine, building her dream one scene at a time. And somewhere in the city, Minho silently cheered for her, knowing she was proving herself not just to the world, but to those who had tried to control her. 3 years had passed since the staged divorce, yet love had bound Maya and Minho closer than ever. While the world believed they had gone their separate ways, they had continued to meet in secret, in quiet cafes along the dim banks of the Han River, or inside her small apartment. They had built a world of their own, safe from the judgment of others. But that night felt different. Maya had just finished another successful TV appearance, her career blazing brighter than ever. When she slipped into the back seat of Minho's waiting car, she found him watching her with an intensity she hadn't seen in years. "You were incredible tonight," he whispered, brushing his fingers against hers. "But you're more than what the world sees. You're my everything." Her smile was warm, but her voice trembled with the question that had lived in her heart for too long. "Minho, how long are we going to keep hiding? How long do we have to pretend we don't belong to each other in the open?" For a moment, silence filled the car. Then Minho reached for her hand, gripping it firmly as his eyes burned with determination. "We're not hiding anymore," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "I'm done watching you from the shadows. You are my woman, Maya, and I want the whole world to see it. Starting with my parents." Maya's breath caught. "Your parents?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. "I've let them control too much of our lives already, but not anymore. You've proven to the world who you are, strong, talented, irreplaceable. And it's time they see you the way I see you. No more secrets. No more fear." Her eyes welled with tears, torn between hope and fear. "But Minho, what if they never accept me? What if they still try to tear us apart?" "Then I'll fight them," he said without hesitation. "I'll fight anyone who stands in the way. Because losing you again is not an option. Maya, I want you by my side, not just in secret, but in the open. As my partner. As the woman I love." His words pierced through every wall she had built, leaving only the truth between them. She leaned into his embrace, her tears falling freely, not of sorrow, but of relief. This time there would be no hiding. The black car slowed to a stop in front of the Kong family mansion. The evening sky was painted in soft hues of orange, casting a glow on the white marble walls of the estate. Maya's hands were trembling as she clutched her bag tightly, her heart racing faster than her steps could carry. "Minho, are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice barely steady. "What if they humiliate me again? What if they—" He reached out, gently holding her trembling fingers. "I told you, Maya. I'm not hiding anymore. You are my woman, and today the world will know it, starting with my parents." Inside, the mansion was unusually quiet. The chandeliers sparkled above, but the usual coldness in the air was replaced with a heavy tension. The Kong parents were already seated in the living room. When Maya entered beside Minho, she braced herself for sharp words, icy stares, and rejection. But what happened next left her breathless. Chairman Kong, the same man who once threatened her father and forced their separation, stood up slowly. His usually stern eyes softened, and his voice carried a weight she had never heard before. "Maya," he began, his tone heavy with regret. "We wronged you. We were blinded by greed and arrogance. We thought money could control everything, even love. And for that we are deeply sorry." Maya blinked in disbelief. Her heart thudded loudly as she looked at Minho's mother, who stepped forward, tears shimmering in her eyes. The woman who once scorned her now held out her hands. "Please forgive us," she said softly. "We see you now, not just as the girl we tried to push away, but as the woman who stood by our son when we couldn't. You loved him when he was broken, and for that, you deserve our respect and our acceptance." Maya's lips parted, but no words came out. The emotions choked her, and her vision blurred with tears. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, but never did she imagine it would come like this. Her once ruthless in-laws bowing their pride before her. Minho squeezed her hand, his smile filled with pride. "You see, Maya, I told you no one can take you from me, not even them." Chairman Kong nodded firmly. "Stay with him, Maya. Stay with our son. We don't ask this as his parents who once stood against you, but as a family who now recognizes your worth." The room fell into silence, heavy with sincerity. Maya's tears finally spilled, but this time they were tears of relief. For the first time since stepping into Minho's world, she felt seen, not as an outsider, but as someone truly accepted. And in that moment, she knew this wasn't just an apology. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The air inside the Kong mansion felt softer than Maya remembered, no longer heavy with judgment, but warm with humility. Minho's parents had bowed their heads, their voices trembling with regret as they admitted their greed and begged for her forgiveness. Maya's heart raced. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, recognition, acceptance, but now that it was here, she stood frozen. Her eyes shifted from the bowed heads of Chairman and Madame Kong to Minho, who stood tall beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly as if he would never let go again. He turned to her, his gaze unwavering. "Maya," his voice was low but carried the weight of his soul. "3 years ago, my parents forced us into a marriage I didn't understand. You suffered because of their choices, and I was too weak to protect you the way I should have." Her lips parted, trembling, but before she could speak, he dropped to one knee right there in the mansion's grand hall. The once cold marble floor now reflected a moment filled with raw sincerity. This time, Minho continued, his eyes glistening, "I'm not asking you as Chairman Kang's son. I'm asking you as Minho, the man who has loved you in secret, the man who has missed you every day. Please, Maya, will you be my wife again? Not because they chose it, but because I do." Gasps filled the room. Madame Kong covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks, while Chairman Kong looked away, humbled by the love his son displayed so openly. Maya's tears finally broke free. Streaming down her face, she sank to her knees in front of Minho, her trembling hands cupping his face. "You fool!" she whispered through her sobs. "You never had to ask twice. I've always been yours." Cheers and sobs erupted around them. But for Maya and Minho, the world had gone quiet. At last, their love was theirs, chosen, unshaken, and unstoppable. The evening sun poured golden light across the Kong family mansion, no longer a place of intimidation, but of warmth and welcome. For the first time in years, Maya sat openly at the family dining table, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Beside her was Minho, his hand gently laced with hers, and across from them sat Chairman Kong and Madame Kong. Faces softened by humility, their pride stripped away, replaced with genuine respect. They spoke to her not as a foreigner, not as someone beneath their status, but as their daughter. The once cold table now overflowed with laughter and shared stories, the invisible walls of class and culture finally torn down. In the midst of that warmth, Maya's father entered the room. Dressed neatly in a suit, his posture straight, he carried himself not as a man burdened by shame, but as one restored. He pressed a hand to his chest as pride swelled within him. He had never seen his daughter so cherished. The company had called him back, not out of pity, but out of recognition of his brilliance. This time, there were no whispers behind his back, no threats to silence him, only respect. When his eyes met Maya's, pride shone brighter than words could ever capture. He had seen his daughter fall, forced into a marriage she never asked for, pushed away in disgrace, only to rise again by chasing her dream. And now here she was, not only a celebrated actress admired across Korea, but also a woman deeply loved and cherished by the very man who once stood between her and freedom. Minho raised his glass, his eyes tender as they locked with Maya's. To love that endured storms, he said. To family not built by power or money, but by forgiveness and respect. Maya smiled, her heart swelling as she glanced around the table. The place where she was once seen as an outsider now felt like home. She leaned her head on Minho's shoulder, whispering softly, "We finally made it." He kissed the crown of her head, his voice low but certain. "We always would, Maya, because I was never letting you go." And so, with her father's dignity restored, her in-laws transformed by humility, and her own dreams fulfilled, Maya's story closed not with pain, but with peace. Theirs was no longer just a marriage of circumstance. It was love, tested, proven, and victorious. A love that became the foundation of a beautiful family, where respect replaced pride and forgiveness built bridges stronger than bloodlines. It was at last a happy ending. True love is not built on wealth, power, or family pressure, but on choice, patience, and sacrifice. No matter the obstacles, when love is genuine, it will always find its way back and bring healing, forgiveness, and unity. Thank you for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new here, please tell us where you are watching from. We would love to know you. And if you love this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your kindness keeps us going. This is Afro Love Diaries, where every heartbeat tells a story.